Hey y'all, we're back today and we have another what if question that I think a lot of Christians struggle to answer when it comes to going out and making disciples and sharing the gospel. So today the question we're really going to be looking into is, what if I get rejected? What if I get rejected? And scripture for that to be Philemon chapter 1 verse 6. If you don't know anything about Philemon, it's only one chapter, so if you've hit Philemon 2, you've got the wrong kind of Bible. But I really just want to, answer that question a little bit first and then dive into the scripture and some of the context of that as well. So the question of what if I get rejected is a common question. But I think the question is less of a what if question and more of a what do I do when kind of question. It's less of a what if I get rejected, but what do I do when I get rejected? Because let me tell you, as Christians, we will be rejected. There will still be people, unfortunately, who go against what the gospel says, people who turn away from the gospel. Matthew 10:22 reminds us that the world will hate you because it hated Christ first. But we need to continue to be faithful to the end. So diving into Philemon verse 6, I just want to give some context to this ahead of time. And this is Paul writing, and we've explored a lot of Paul's writings before, but he's been a prisoner in and out of prison. But he's also a prisoner of Christ. He hasn't just been someone who's been in and out of jail, whether it be in Rome or many of the different places he's traveled, but he's also a prisoner of Christ, meaning that he puts Christ's desires first before his own. He puts what's important to Christ before himself, and I think that's one great context for us. But here's how it becomes, how it makes him a prisoner to the world as well. It's because Paul puts Christ's desires so high up on the priority list, where society finds them so low, that Paul lives in a way that society's going to reject. Society's going to feel threatened by it, and society's going to reject it. And Paul lived in a way that society rejected him so much that he went to prison a number of times because of it. So just some context for this passage and what is really being said here. And so verse 6 says this: I pray that your partnership with us in the faith may be effective in deepening your understandings of everything we share for the sake of Christ. So Paul's reminding us that what we do is for the sake of Christ, and so when we do something, we need to do it for the sake of Christ. So what do we do when we get rejected? Because it's become more of a what do we do when, not a what if question now. What do we do when we get rejected? We got to anchor down and hold tight to this community that God has blessed us with. We gotta hold root, take root in this community that we have of people who already are believers. We have that community to build us up so that we can go out into the world, so that we can share the gospel with others. This community is not to pull us away from the world, but to prepare us for the world so that we can go into the world. But unfortunately, sometimes, people that we try to share the gospel with don't always think that they need it. It breaks my heart, and it breaks God's heart. And I hope it breaks your heart too. So when we are rejected, what do? We need to turn to our community, yes. But we also need to turn to God. We need to pause, and we need to push through. When I say push through, I mean we need to pray. We need to understand. We need to summarize, and we need to hand truth. Yes, we need to pray. To pray that God would give us the right words to say. To pray that their hearts would be softened. And even to pray that God would put the right people in their life so that they can be surrounded with people who are constantly trying to show them truth, trying to share with them the truth of the gospel. We have to pray that God would put the people in their life that they need so that the gospel can reach them in numerous ways, so that that seed can be planted and watered and fertilized and loved, and that seed can grow. It'll take time. Let's first pause and pray. But we also need to understand where they're coming from. It's not enough to simply just pray for someone and leave it at that. Because if you pray for their heart, someone's still got to tell them something that they can understand in their mind. We also need to understand where they're coming from, why they are rejecting us, why they are rejecting something that us Christians know to be as truth. We need to listen to them. We need to have these real, deep conversations with them. It can't just be a one-time thing. It can't just be, hey, how are you? But we need to invest and have these real, rich conversations with them. To have this real fellowship, this real community, this real sense of connection. Then we can summarize. Once we understand them, once we understand where they're coming from, what their background is, then we can summarize. We can summarize what they believe and why they believe that. Once we know what they believe and why they believe that, then we can begin to share the gospel with them in a meaningful way. Is it because maybe they feel out of place in the church? Well, how do we address that? Is it because they feel that the church is a sacred place and they aren't sacred enough? God will meet you where you are. How do we convey that message to them? Is it because they feel judged? How do we show them that as Christians we aren't meant to judge? Only God can judge. How can we address their doubts, their disbeliefs? We have to first know why they reject it, why they reject the gospel, so that we can share the gospel in a way that'll get through to them. And then we can hand them the truth that is the gospel. This book right here, it is truth. Then we can put that out in front of them. We can lay that out in front of them and let them know, this is what I believe and this is why. This is truth, and this truth will bring love, and this truth will bring joy. And I hope that you too can experience this. And they may or may not accept it. Unfortunately, that's the truth. So what if they still reject us? Then now it's more of a what if. Yes, what do we do when we are rejected? But what if they still reject us, even once we pause and we try to push through? If they still reject us, we have to, one, trust that the seed was planted. We have to continue to pray that their hearts would be softened. We have to continue to reach out to them. If the seed wasn't planted, how can we soften the soil so that we can plant the seed? We do that by continuing to invest, continuing to reach out. We continue to love them the way that Christ first loved us. We also have to remember this, though, that when we are rejected, spreading our personal opinions and our anger is not the same as sharing the truth. Yes, I believe the gospel. I know it to be true. But I'm going to share that. I'm not going to share my thoughts and feelings. Like, how could you not believe this? I'm not going to share that. I'm not going to say like that. I'm going to say, this is what I believe is true, and this is why. Getting angry that they reject something that you believe, getting upset that they don't believe the same thing, it's not going to get through to them. It's going to push them away even further more often than not. So we need to spread the gospel. And in order to share the gospel, we need to first be filled with the gospel. And we've talked about this before, but we need to be filled with truth so that truth will pour out of us. So what if I get rejected? Good. I'll say it how it is, good, because that means that you actually took the first step of sharing the gospel. A lot of people are too afraid by the question that they don't even take that first step. So what if I get rejected? Good. That means you actually shared the gospel. But also remember, if you get rejected, pause and push through. Use truth, use love, use joy, and show mercy.